Here is *** keynote 1 expanded to tilde 600 words **, written in ** 10 line paragraphs ** with no headings and no ending statements. Each line is separated for clarity as required. When a man uses words that make you question your worth, he's not exposing your flaws. He's exposing his limitations, because emotionally available men don't shame you for having a heart or needing connection, and they certainly don't label your vulnerability as weakness. When he says you're too emotional, what he's truly saying is he lacks the skill, patience, or maturity to meet you where you are, and instead of admitting that, he makes you feel guilty for wanting something as human as understanding. It's easier for him to push the responsibility onto you than to confront the parts of himself he hasn't learned to manage, and this dynamic becomes the silent poison that slowly convinces you to shrink your needs in order to keep the peace. But love should never require you to shrink, because the moment you start believing that your desires are excessive, you begin training yourself to settle for crumbs while calling it loyalty. You deserve someone who doesn't flinch at your feelings or dismiss what matters to you. Someone who knows that empathy isn't a chore but a privilege in a relationship. A man who values you listens even when it's inconvenient, because connection is not built during perfect moments, but in the uncomfortable ones where patience and care are actually tested. If he repeatedly makes you feel like your emotions are an inconvenience, that becomes your signal not to fight harder, but to step back and observe how consistently he invalidates what you say. The words a man uses when he's stressed or tired reveal more about his emotional capacity than anything he promises in calm moments, because real character shows when the stakes are high. And when someone's default response to your feelings is criticism or dismissal, the truth is simple. He's telling you he isn't able or willing to show up in the way you need. You are entitled to a partner who treats your heart with respect, not someone who makes you apologize for having one in the first place. When a man talks to you in ways that create confusion, doubt, or emotional instability, his words are highlighting a lack of emotional safety, and emotional safety is the bare minimum for a healthy relationship, not a luxury that only patient women earn. The people who truly care about you speak in ways that bring clarity, not chaos. And if his language consistently makes you second, guess your value. You're not listening to a man who's being honest. You're listening to a man who benefits from you feeling insecure. Manipulation doesn't always show up as shouting or cruelty. Sometimes it hides in casual comments that slowly chip away at your confidence until you no longer trust your own intuition. He might say he didn't mean it, that you're overthinking, or that you're reading too much into things, but a pattern of invalidation is still a pattern even when it's wrapped in soft excuses. Over time, you start trying to become smaller, quieter, easier, believing that if you can just be less, he will suddenly become more. But love doesn't grow by shrinking yourself to fit someone's lack. Healthy love welcomes conversation, emotional nuance, and the courage to address uncomfortable truths, because real intimacy is built through understanding, not avoidance. You deserve a man who meets your emotions with curiosity instead of criticism. Someone who sees your feelings as an invitation to connect instead of a reason to withdraw. When his words repeatedly force you to defend your needs instead of express them, the relationship becomes a place where you survive rather than thrive, and that is not what love is meant to feel like. Your emotions are not a problem to be solved, they're signals of what your heart requires, and the right man will treat those signals with attention instead of annoyance. When his language consistently makes you feel unworthy, that is your moment to choose yourself, because the person who values you will never use his words to make you doubt the beauty of your own depth. Here is keynote 2 expanded to ~6, 100 words written in Matthew Hussey's tone with 10 line paragraphs no headings and no ending statements When a man speaks in ways that keep you guessing, waiting, or wondering where you stand, he's not being mysterious, he's being non-committal, because clarity is a language, and the men who genuinely want you speak it effortlessly. When he says things like, "I don't know what I want," what he's actually doing is creating enough emotional ambiguity to keep you close without giving you the certainty you deserve, and that uncertainty becomes a slow emotional drain. It's easy to romanticize mixed signals when your heart is invested, but mixed signals are not signs of potential. They're signs of a lack of emotional availability. The moment a man makes you feel like you have to compete for his attention, that's the moment he's showing you he doesn't value consistency, because real interest doesn't fluctuate depending on convenience. A man who genuinely sees your worth won't risk losing you by being vague about his intentions, because he understands that clarity is a form of respect and not something you should ever have to beg for. When he says, "Let's just see where this goes," he's choosing comfort over commitment, and that phrase becomes a clever shield that allows him to enjoy the benefits of your presence without offering you emotional security. These kinds of words aren't harmless, they're emotional placeholders that keep you invested in a future he has no intention of building, because he knows you care enough to stay hopeful. Hope becomes the trap, because you keep convincing yourself that if you are patient, understanding, or low pressure enough, he will suddenly wake up to your value. But clarity doesn't require pressure. It only requires honesty, and a man who wants you long-term won't hide behind uncertainty, because he won't want to risk someone else giving you the certainty he won't. What feels like patience on your part often becomes prolonged self-sacrifice, all because he refuses to make his intentions as clear as the effort you're already giving him. Ambivalence often disguises itself as emotional nuance, but it's simply avoidance wrapped in polite language, because a man who is unsure about you is not a man preparing to choose you. When his words suggest you should be okay with casual effort, fragmented attention, or unpredictable affection, he's asking you to participate in your own disappointment. The belief that you can change him by being supportive, patient, or understanding becomes the emotional hook that keeps you tied to someone who only shows you enough to keep you hopeful, but never enough to make you secure. Real connection isn't built on guessing games, and you should never mistake inconsistency for emotional complexity, because love doesn't need to be decoded, it needs to be recognized. A man who wants you will express it through his actions lining up with his words, and there will be no need for you to chase, interpret, or negotiate your place in his life. But when a man uses vague phrases like "I'm just going with flow," he is telling you that the relationship will only move at the pace that is convenient for him, and convenience is not commitment. You deserve someone who chooses you with intention, not someone who treats you like an optional part of his life while enjoying the benefits of your consistency and loyalty. When his language creates a dynamic where you feel grateful for crumbs, it's a sign that the emotional standard has already been lowered to protect his comfort instead of your well-being. Your heart was never meant to operate on uncertainty, because love grows in clarity, affection, and mutual effort, not confusion or emotional waiting rooms. And when his words repeatedly show you ambiguity instead of direction, that is your reminder that genuine desire is never this complicated, and someone who truly wants you will make sure you never feel unsure of where you stand. Here is *** keynote 3 expanded to ~6, 100 words *** with **10, line paragraphs ***, Matthew Hussey tone ***, no headings and no ending statements When a man starts using language that shifts responsibility onto you, he's revealing a mindset where accountability is optional for him but expected from you, and that imbalance becomes the groundwork for emotional manipulation. When he says things like "you made me do this," or "if you didn't act like that, I wouldn't react this way," he's not describing the truth of the situation. He's rewriting it in a way that protects his ego at the cost of your self-esteem. Over time, these subtle shifts in blame begin to distort your reality, making you question whether your reactions are valid or whether you're somehow the cause of every conflict. It's not just the words themselves that are damaging. It's the way they train you to accept behavior that chips away at your confidence and replaces your clarity with confusion. He learns that the more he blames you, the more responsible you start to feel, and the more responsible you feel, the more control he gains without ever having to raise his voice. Manipulation doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it's soft, quiet, and coated in disappointment, making you feel guilty for asking for basic respect. A man who values you doesn't hide behind blame because he understands that healthy relationships require emotional maturity, not emotional shortcuts. But a man who constantly shifts responsibility sees your empathy as an opportunity to avoid growth because he knows you'll take on the guilt he refuses to acknowledge. This dynamic doesn't appear overnight. It creeps in through repeated moments where he refuses to own his choices and instead makes you the emotional buffer for his behavior. The longer you tolerate it, the more he learns that accountability is optional, and the more you start to believe that you're responsible for fixing what he's breaking. When blame becomes his default language, your emotional world begins to shrink because you start managing his reactions instead of expressing your own needs, and that shift is one of the earliest signs of emotional exhaustion. You begin to stay quiet to avoid conflict, walking on eggshells around his moods, hoping that if you say everything perfectly, he won't twist your words into another reason to criticize you. The tragedy is that you start believing the silence is peace when it's actually suppression, because emotionally safe relationships don't require you to mute your voice to maintain harmony. When a man blames you for his anger, his distance, or his disrespect, he's telling you that your emotional needs are secondary to his comfort, and that belief becomes the root of deeper toxicity. His inability to take responsibility isn't a misunderstanding. It's a deliberate pattern that allows him to avoid accountability by positioning you as the emotional culprit. Healthy partners communicate their frustrations clearly, owning their reactions, acknowledging their flaws, and working toward resolution without attacking your character. But when he refuses to do that, you end up carrying the emotional weight of two people, apologizing for things you didn't cause and fixing messes you didn't create. You begin to question your instincts, your behavior, and eventually even your worth, because repeated blame has a way of turning strong, confident people into watered-down versions of themselves. The more you accept responsibility for his behavior, the more he expects you to manage it, creating a cycle where blame becomes the tool he uses to maintain emotional power. And in that environment, love stops feeling like connection and starts feeling like performance, as though you must earn peace by absorbing the impact of his actions. A man who uses blame as a shield isn't protecting you, he's protecting his ego, and egos that fragile always create relationships that feel fragile too. His words might come wrapped in frustration or delivered calmly, but the message is always the same. He is unwilling to look at himself, so he makes you look at yourself instead. This is how emotional manipulation hides in plain sight, not through dramatic explosions, but through repeated, subtle statements that place you at the center of every problem. You deserve a partner who can self-reflect, who can say I was wrong, who can acknowledge hurt without needing to assign fault to the person who loves him. Accountability is one of the purest forms of love because it says, I care enough to do better, and you should never settle for someone who refuses to offer that. Your emotions aren't weapons, your boundaries aren't attacks, and your reactions aren't excuses for someone else's lack of emotional discipline. When his language consistently blames you for his choices, it's not a sign that you need to improve. It's a sign that he refuses to. And the moment you recognize that pattern, you reclaim the power he tried to take through guilt, confusion, and emotional redirection. You were never meant to carry the weight of a man who refuses to carry even his own, and any relationship that thrives on blame is one that asks you to dim your strength to protect his weakness. Your worth was never up for negotiation, no matter how many times someone tried to convince you it was. Here is *** keynote 4 expanded to 600 words *** written in *** Matthew Hussey's tone *** with ** 10 line paragraphs *** no headings *** and *** no ending statements **. When a man uses words that limit your dreams, your expectations, or your sense of what's possible, he's revealing not who you are but how little he's prepared to grow with you, because real connection demands emotional responsibility, not excuses. When he says things like, I'm not ready for something serious, he's telling you his comfort matters more than your clarity, and he hopes you'll be so attached that you'll accept uncertainty as the price of keeping him. Over time, these small statements become the boundaries he places around your future, shaping the relationship into something that always feels like it's almost something but never fully becomes anything meaningful. It's easy to rationalize these words as caution or honesty, but the truth is simpler. He's signaling how much effort he is willing to offer, and the answer is always not enough. A man who values you will never risk losing you by staying vague, because he knows clarity doesn't trap the right people. It reassures them and makes them feel safe. When he tells you that your standards are too much, what he really means is he's unwilling to rise to them, and instead of admitting his own limitations, he frames your needs as the problem. Your desire for consistency, emotional presence, and long-term intention is not excessive. It's the foundation of a real partnership, and it requires more maturity than he's prepared to give. Instead of stretching himself to match the level of connection you're offering, he tries to make you shrink yours so he can stay comfortable without evolving. But any relationship that asks you to dim your expectations is a relationship that slowly dims your dignity as well, because your heart was never meant to live inside someone else's limitations. The moment his words make your future feel smaller, that's the moment he's telling you exactly what he plans to contribute, and it's rarely more than the bare minimum. When a man uses language that minimizes what you want, he's showing you the gap between how you feel and how he intends to show up in your life, and that gap becomes the distance you keep trying to fill with effort. You might start convincing yourself that if you stay patient or understanding, one day he'll wake up ready to commit. But readiness is not something that appears out of nowhere. It's a mindset a man either has or doesn't. A man who wants a future with you doesn't hide behind phrases like "I'm not good at relationships" or "I just need space." He communicates in ways that build connection instead of delay it. These phrases are emotional placeholders, allowing him to enjoy companionship without providing commitment, and they work because they give you just enough hope to keep you invested. But hope without action becomes self-betrayal, especially when you're the only one putting in emotional effort, waiting for him to meet you where you already are. When someone truly sees your value, they don't ask you to adjust your expectations downward. They rise to meet them because they understand those expectations come from a place of self-worth, not pressure. A man who is ready for love doesn't fear your standards. He aligns with them because he recognizes that strong standards create strong relationships. But a man who resists growth will always make your needs sound unreasonable, not because they are, but because they require more emotional maturity than he's willing to develop. And the longer you stay hoping he'll change, the more you risk building a life around a version of him that only exists in your imagination. Your future deserves someone who builds with you, not someone who keeps you in emotional stand by while he decides whether he's capable of offering the bare essentials. When his words consistently point toward avoidance, indecision, or limitation, he's not giving you honesty to help you. He's giving you honesty to protect his freedom without losing your presence. And while honesty is valuable, it becomes manipulation when it's used to lower your expectations rather than raise his behavior, because he benefits from your investment without needing to reciprocate it. A man who envisions a future with you speaks in terms of we, and not maybe, because he sees commitment as an opportunity, not a threat. You were not meant to build your life around someone who needs to be dragged into clarity, because real partnership flourishes in certainty, direction, and mutual effort. If his words consistently make you feel like wanting more is wrong, that's your reminder that your life is bigger than his limitations, and your heart deserves more than conditional affection. The right person will expand your world, not shrink it, because they won't fear your ambition, your standards, or the depth of your love. They'll match it with their own. You should never apologize for wanting something meaningful, consistent, and secure, because those desires come from a place of strength, not neediness. The man who is meant for you won't make you earn clarity. He'll offer it freely because he wants to build a life, not just share a moment. Your future is too valuable to waste on someone whose words keep you standing still, hoping he'll eventually step forward. You deserve someone who already knows how to show up, not someone you have to wait on while your heart grows tired of making excuses for his hesitation.